So let's see here. Here's President Trump right now live in New York City.
Everyday expenses have skyrocketed by double digits since Biden and Harris both took office.
Since then, the burden of record high inflation has continued to push the limits for people across the country.
The number of Americans living paycheck to paycheck jumped to 61%.
Our domestic policy, economic policy, immigration policy, foreign policy, energy policy, law and order, all of it is downright dangerous.
Americans are hurting. But we have to go forward now. The country needs a win in this.
And there's only one person who can make that vision a reality. Donald J. Trump!
I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
This is the most resilient human being I've ever met.
We will defend America against all threats and protect America against all dangers.
He brought manufacturing back to America. Small businesses flourished. He did what he promised. He put America first.
You had a prosperity under Trump. People's incomes were going up.
Not only did he keep his promise, but the results are there to show.
We will never give in. We will never give up. And we will never stop fighting for our country, our flag, and our freedom.
There is no bulldozer strong enough to remove the legacy that he has built.
I will never stop fighting for you. So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
What did you do? Why'd you kill the cat? Smile for me. Smile over your teeth. Go like this. Did you eat that cat? you eat it? No, why'd you kill it? Did you guys see all this?
No, we pulled up and she was just laying there with him.
Did you see her eating it?
Eating it.
She was eating it?
Yeah, she was.
You call the Humane Society, see if they'll come pick this cat up. It's deceased.
What would you do day one?
There are a number of things on day one. On day one priority. Ready on day one.
Kamala, day one was January of 2021.
Day one for Kamala was 3.5 years ago. Why hasn't she done it?
Crime rates have skyrocketed over the past 4 years.
This just in, inflation is headed in the wrong direction.
In June of 2022, inflation peaked at a high of 9.1%, which was the highest since November of 1981.
We continue to see mass crossings without any resistance whatsoever. We continue to see mass releases, and we continue to see Border Patrol completely outmanned.
Harris was a, quote, central member of the national security decision-making team, and Harris herself said she was the last person in the room.
The NFIB's optimism index slipped again in March and has remained at recessionary levels for nearly a year.
Where has she been? And why hasn't she done it? Why hasn't she done it?
Yeah, she was actually asked, if I recall correctly, the first question, we're better off now, than we were. And she started all this aspirational, inspirational ambitions and this and that. She didn't answer any questions. I came away from this saying to myself, 30% of Americans don't know what Kamala Harris stands for. And they still don't know what she stands for. But what I came away with that knowing, and I agree with Greg, the voters lost last night. The voters lost for several reasons. And this segment is about the legacy media. To me, ABC didn't care about the truth. They were pushing libelous questions. The questions were like a push poll. Like you call someone up allegedly trying to get, find out what people are thinking. But, isn't it true that the rooster killed the duck or whatever? And, the person said, yeah, of course it's true. And that they would actually go to Charlottesville and ask that question as though that hasn't already been debunked. And she never had to answer anything. And the major networks sanctioned these lies as if they were truths. And that is how the network and the legacy media put the final nail in the coffin. Donald Trump told us about fake news. Last night was the end of the legacy media. And if I were ever to do a debate again, I would not do it on the legacy media. We were fooled by CNN. CNN just kind of sat there. But you know why? You know why it was level with CNN? Because CNN was complicit with the Dems. They wanted Joe Biden out. So it was a fair debate. This was, we got to take Kamala's side. We got to make like January 6th. Every time she lied, they would not fact check her. She says 140 police officers were injured and some died on January 6th. What police officer died on January 6th? Ashley Babbitt died on January 6th. And then they go on and on and on. And third term abortion. She wouldn't answer the question. They didn't push for an answer. And, I got to say one more thing. Who the hell do they think they are fact-checking? When David Muir says, well, I didn't get that, what was it, the impression on the whisker, won by a whisker? What was that term that he used? He said, sarcasm. I didn't interpret it that way. We're not asking you for your interpretation of what Donald Trump said. And finally, ABC News claimed that Trump was wrong when Trump said crime is going up. They said, no, crime is going down. They're wrong. They lied. And I'll tell you why. Because the FBI has made it clear that 30% of the police departments, including New York City and Los Angeles, did not respond to their request about crime. I have the stat right here. So they pushed lies. They defamed the president to push Kamala, who answered no question and was the queen of theatrics.
Now, RNC co-chair Lara Trump. Lara, great to see you. What about this idea of another debate? I know Fox would love to host a debate. Brett and Martha, I think it would be, everyone would watch, that's for sure. But it seems that he's mulling it, not sure.
Yeah, well, Donald Trump, of course, had already agreed to a Fox News debate. It was last week on September 4th. Kamala Harris didn't want to agree to that. I wonder why, Laura. Look, I think he's very open. I think the American people deserve to see these two people and hear their ideas. And unfortunately, as you just laid out last night, we really didn't get that. What a disservice that ABC News did to the country. They had an opportunity here to really get to know Kamala Harris, really hear about all of her radical ideas. Donald Trump is the only one, by the way, who talked about that. But on the other side, to give him an opportunity to say things. And of course, it was 3-on-1. He was on defense the whole time, having to fight them all off. But I think what last night showed us, Laura, if it wasn't already crystal clear to everybody out there, is that Donald Trump is not just running against a candidate. He's running against an entire system. This was a continuation last night of the Hollywood production that the Democrat Party has truly become. And Kamala Harris is one of their best actors. You said it. You give her a line, man, she will memorize it for 4 years. They gave her the line to say, if anybody asked about how's Joe Biden doing, is he up to the task? She would deliver that line and lie directly to the American people. They have cranked this machine up to high speed. And last night you saw her in quite a performance alongside her fellow thespians of David Muir and Lindsay Davis. But the problem they're having, you just said it, is that the American people were not convinced by anything Kamala Harris said that she is the right fit. They're having a hard time convincing people that she is going to change anything for them based on the bad economy we have right now, the open border that she's been in charge of, the wars that have broken out under her watch. She didn't say a single thing that convinced anybody in this country that that she deserves their vote. Laura, and they're having a big problem with that right now.
To that point that you just raised, I find it fascinating to actually listen to real people. So I'll shut up and let's listen to what an undecided voter said after watching the debate last night.
It's important to remember that we are voting for the leader of our country and not who we like the most or who we want in our wedding party, but who is actually going to make our country better. And we're in an incredibly unique situation where we've had both of the candidates in office before, and we've gotten to see what they would do. And when facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office.
Devastating, Laura. And that census data that just came out yesterday, I wish it had gotten mentioned at the debate last night. But, I mean, Americans were richer. Back in December of 2019, before the pandemic, the growth under Biden is dwarfed by the growth of first 3 years under Trump. 7 times the growth in wages. That in and of itself that's the mic drop moment.
Yeah, and people have to remember, you are hiring someone for a job. The people in Washington, D.C., Laura, actually work for us, for we the people. And Donald Trump himself, I think, said in that Sean Hannity town hall last week, look, you don't really even have to like me, but you have to vote for me because I'm good for this country. I'll be good for you and your family. I'll put more money in your pocket. I'll keep our country safe. I'll secure our southern border. What that woman said there in that soundbite, I think, is the way a lot of Americans feel. You don't need to go hang out with Donald Trump, although a lot of people would like to do that. I can tell you he's a great time. But you do have to look at his policies and truly reflect on how your life was when he was in office.
I think it's results versus rehearsed lines. Best Emmy, maybe an Emmy Award for that performance. I don't know. That might be the best way to go. Laura, great to see you.
Well, they think she needs another crack at it, so maybe not yet. They're hoping for a second one.
All right, Laura, great to see you.
She's only Charlie being pragmatic to win the election. Bernie Sanders said that.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to one of her own supporters on that key point. Look, this is why she lost the debate last night. She lost it because the onus was completely on her. She's the one that 1/3 of the American population says they don't know where she stands on things. They don't know enough about her to support her or to make a decision about her. And so the onus is entirely on her to make the case why people should trust her. And she failed to do it last night. She failed to explain to people why she's changed her position on things like fracking and Israel and all these other topics. She also failed to explain why she has embraced all of these wildly radical positions that she now conveniently says she has changed her position on. You and I both know that the only reason she's changed her position is because she'll say absolutely anything to get elected. And as Tommy just pointed out, all the Trump campaign has to do is run the footage of what she said last night compared to all the footage that she said before, just as you just did, all you have to do is run that and let her sink herself with her own words in their ads. And that's why she lost. People don't trust her. They don't know her. The onus is on her, and she failed last night.
Vice President Harris.
Vice President Harris.
Vice President Harris. My name is Steve Nakui. I'm the father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nakui.
My name is Jim McCollum. I am the Gold Star father of United States Marine Corps Lance Corporal Riley McCollum.
This is Mark Schmitz, Gold Star father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz.
My name is Darren Hoover, and I'm the Gold Star father of United States Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover.
My daughter-in-law, Sergeant Nicole Leanne G., was killed in the Afghanistan exit at Abbey Gate.
Our kids were murdered because of your administration.
You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. And no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service.
You have 13 families who have been waiting over 3 years to so much as get a phone call, to so much as hear our kids' names said aloud.
You failed for 3 years and 8 months to acknowledge our kids.
Where were you and Joe Biden on August 26, 2024? Nowhere near Arlington Cemetery. You couldn't be bothered to be with us or even say our kids' names, just as you had done for the last 3 years.
Vice President Harris, I ask you, why won't you return a call and explain to us how you call my daughter-in-law's death a success? President Trump has called. President Trump shows up. But President Trump takes the time to hear our loved ones' stories.
We invited him to be there.
These are the only memories we get to make with our son, and it is you who is playing politics and trying to detract from our memories made that day.
President Trump has been there for us. He's been a rock for us. He showed compassion for us, and he showed he truly cares for the families that truly do know what the ultimate sacrifice really is.
All right, Raymond, we've been covering all aspects of the debate tonight, but there's something that you think we're all missing.
Look, Laura, I watched with everyone else, and I've been listening to a lot of the commentary. Last night, I said this debate is not for confirmed Republicans or Democrats. It's about moving that sliver of undecided voters, those independents, especially women. Look how they reacted to the debate.
Didn't get answers to fundamental questions that we need to know as voters. Her economic plans. What is an opportunity economy? What does that mean?
When facts come to facts, my life was better when Trump was in office. The economy was higher, inflation was lower, things were better overall. And now with Kamala's administration, things haven't been so fantastic. And she's saying she can fix the problems that her administration has caused, but I just don't know if I can afford to take that risk.
Race baiting and fear mongering was a big part of her tactic tonight. I think he was gaslit during the entire debate, and that was probably why he was so defensive. Absolutely. And even when he brought up the topic of race, he brought that up because she's pandering.
Yeah. Look, these voters saw something that I think we perhaps didn't. Kamala Harris was like an Oprah Winfrey quote book. I mean, she was just spewing these bromides. It didn't resonate. The lack of specificity may have hurt her with these voters. By the way, there's been a 14-point swing in that Marist poll among independents toward Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think when times are good, it might work to kind of be very general, and I'm going to bring people together, and that's fine.
Laura,
but
in full candor, I have to tell you, there were moments where I thought the president missed chances to clarify his record. He took the bait thrown by Harris and the moderators. But at times, I thought he came on too strong, even blustery. But we have to have the humility to recognize sometimes we're not processing this the way independent voters are. Fox monitored independent voters in real time. This yellow line you're going to see on your screen, those are the independents. Watch their reaction.
She was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out. Wait a minute. I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. Millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
Okay. Look at that. Look at the yellow lines going up.
You see it start to move. Remember how they went after Donald Trump for saying this, that these newly arrived immigrants are taking jobs from Americans? Well, he may be channeling the rage and upsetment that those independents feel toward the government and the media. We'll see what happens here. They may want a fighter and not a fawner.
I like that little chart. All right, Taylor Swift billed herself as a childless cat lady.
Yeah.
Are we still talking about that?
Yes.
That's still what we're doing. And she crashed in at the end of the debate with an Instagram post endorsing Kamala Harris.
Laura, you'll never convince me that this wasn't coordinated, okay? But either to save or amplify Harris post-debate. But over on MSNBC, the Swift endorsement was treated like a new peace deal had been announced at Yalta. Watch.
This is, I think, the most important celebrity endorsement we've ever seen in a presidential campaign. The timing on it is absolutely exquisite. The wording of it is flawless and perfect, right down to the cat lady stuff. It is, for someone who's never been impressed by a celebrity endorsement, this is perfect and powerful.
The most important celebrity endorsement ever? Really? I got some others for you. How about that one? How about this one?
Oh, Sinatra. Oh, yeah. Okay. Don't.
Hello. I mean,
Wait a second. Does he think he's back with the West Wing? Like the lines that are.
It's not working. O'Donnell's gone so swifty, Laura. I expect him to show up in a bedazzled leotard on his show tonight. I mean, this was not a great moment.
Now, my favorite moment was when Maddow read the entire Taylor Swift statement as if it were the Magna Carta.
Oh, they're not playing it, I guess. Well, it was really funny.
That's too bad.
You set it up. It was good.
Come on.
It went on for nearly 2 minutes.
You guys are killing me here.
But the Taylor Swift thing, I'm not sure it really works, Laura.
Hi, folks. RSBN founder and CEO Joe Seals here. Did you know there is nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right. There's a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. And I'm sure you remember the terrible effects that high prices had on most Americans. But there's hope. A surge in prices can be beaten. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group is the ultimate inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word Trump to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax advantage status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future now. Text Trump to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold.
So they wanted to come back, and I said, well, how come China's paying $39 million? They have 1.4 billion people, and we're paying for a much smaller number of people. We're paying 500. We will make the same deal as we made with China. Well, I said, that would mean we'd be paying about 8 million, right? They said, no, we will make the same. We'll let you come in for 39 million. And you know what? I turned them down. Not for that. I turned them down for other reasons, and because they weren't good, and they were dominated by China. But Biden came in, this stupid person came $590 million. Now, he knew what was going on. He knew that, well, he probably didn't. It's really, do you think you know? I don't think he knew. Do you think somebody said, sir, we can do it for 39? You know, it's not the biggest number when you're talking trillions all the time, but it's indicative of stupidity. And she's worse than him. He is a smarter person than she is. Oh, they're waiting for the debate. You know, if I destroy her in the debate, they'll say, Trump suffered a humiliating defeat tonight, no matter what. Although they did, you know, with Biden, one of the CNN people said that about my part, they said, the Donald Trump performance tonight was the single greatest debate performance I've ever seen. 2 days later, all they did is talk about how bad he was. They didn't talk about me. They didn't talk about me anymore. But no, it's a crooked system, but we're going to make it a very legitimate system again. We can do that, and I think we can do it pretty easily with people like you have over here. I think we can actually do it pretty easily. We will establish a panel of top experts to investigate what is causing the decades-long increase in chronic health problems and childhood diseases, including the autoimmune disorders, autism, obesity, infertility, and much more. And Bobby's going to be very much involved in that. We're going to get him involved because that's what he likes. That's what he's great at. Isn't it great to have a Kennedy with us? Isn't that nice? And this is really, I mean, I don't want to disrespect the rest of the family, but this has been the dominant Kennedy for the last 25 years. You know, he's a great guy. I've known him a long time. He's a great guy, and he really wants what's good for the country, and to have his endorsement is a very important thing. And Tulsi endorsed us, too, almost simultaneously. And we love Tulsi. She's been fantastic. She's a woman of great common sense, actually. I've watched her for a long time. She has great common sense. I will ask Congress to pass sweeping reforms to prevent foreign influence peddling, bribery, and corruption like we have seen with a certain family in the United States. The Biden crime family, that's the family. What the hell is happening with that family, Rod? What's going on with that family? You know, the night he spoke at the convention, Congress found out that he stole $27 million. Nothing happened. Nothing happens with these people. He stole $27 million, and he was speaking at the convention. They were saying what a wonderful president he was. The worst ever in history. You know, he made a State of the Union speech, the last one. It was so bad. And I turned to CNN and MSDNC. I wanted to see how bad they'd report on it because, you know, it had to be bad. And I turned, and one of them said, not since Franklin Delano Roosevelt has a speech been made so brilliantly or delivered so well. He was coughing in his hand all the time. He's coughing. Then he walks out and shakes everybody's hand. Some people actually didn't want, they went, hello, sir. Hello, sir. It's wonderful to have you up there, sir. So can you imagine, you know, Franklin Roosevelt was a great speaker in a certain way. Very elegant person, came from a very elegant neighborhood, so to speak. Very, very rich and entitled, but different from these people you have today. But very beautiful speaker, and they compared him to Franklin. Not since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, has anybody made a State of the Union like that? And I said, this is really terrible. This is really terrible. And finally, I will support modifying the 25th Amendment to make clear that if a vice president lies or engages in a conspiracy to cover up the incapacity of the president of the United States, if you do that with a cover-up of the President of the United States, it's grounds for impeachment immediately and removal from office, because that's what they did. That's what they did. You know, think of it. If he didn't go to that debate, he'd still be running. He'd still be running.
Hi, folks. RSBN founder and CEO Joe Steele here. Did you know there is nearly $1 trillion of infrastructure and pandemic funds yet to be spent? That's right, there's a massive amount of money that the lame duck administration is pushing hard to spend in their last few months. If the president is able to push these funds out, we could see another prolonged inflation surge, just like during COVID. And I'm sure you remember the terrible effects that high prices had on most Americans. But there's hope. A surge in prices can be beaten. A gold IRA from Birch Gold Group is the ultimate inflation hedge for your savings in uncertain times. To see how to protect your IRA or 401k, get your free info kit on gold by texting the word Trump to 989898. Birch Gold makes it seamless to roll over your retirement account while preserving your tax advantage status. Don't wait for the president's spending spree to tank the dollar further. Protect your financial future now. Text Trump to the number 989898 for your free info kit from Birch Gold.
To every citizen who's sick and tired of the parasitic political class in Washington that sucks our country of its blood and treasure, November 5th will be your Liberation Day. November 5th this year will be the most important day in the history of our country, because we're not going to have a country anymore if we don't win. It will be the most important day in the history of our country. You know, I used to say that about 2016 because the border was bad, but the border was bad. It was like 5% of what's going on now. It was fine. And I fixed it very quickly and beautifully. And then I couldn't talk about it. I kept saying, I want to talk for the next election. Well, we got millions more votes. I couldn't talk about it. They said, sir, people don't want to hear about the border. It's in great shape. You fixed it. I said, I want to talk about the border. They said, sir, I'm telling you, nobody cares. And it's true. I used to talk about the border. They didn't care because I fixed it. But this border is so much worse. This border is at a level that there's never been a border in the history of the world that's been where 20 or 25 million people have poured in and nobody has any idea where they're coming from. Here in Wisconsin, you also need to defeat a radical left senator named Tammy Baldwin, who's bad news. Baldwin voted with Biden almost 100% of the time, giving you open borders, horrific inflation, the Afghanistan disaster. That's the most embarrassing day, I think, in the history of our country, right? He's nodding. I agree. And everything else, all of these problems that we have, all of the open borders and the people pouring in, you know, all of it, like the energy we can solve quickly, everything we can solve. But we have to do something. We have millions of people coming. I mean, they've poured in. They're here. They're here. You know, the border's been a little bit tougher lately because there's an election. That's the only reason. So the numbers are a little bit better than they were 3 months ago. But that's only for purposes of... The fact is, these people, these 20, 25 million people are already in our country. What they've done to us, it's suicidal. It is suicidal. What they've done to this country, nothing like that has ever... It's an invasion of our country. But running against Tammy Baldwin is a true American patriot. He really is. He's an incredible guy. I don't know. Nothing is easy. You know, you beat these people that are in Washington for so long, and many of them are no good, but they are hard to beat. They're hard to beat. She's no good. I mean, I was president for 4 years. I don't know. I'm not even sure if I ever met her. She doesn't do anything. She just votes the party line, and then she gets the party support. She doesn't do anything for Wisconsin. When I gave you the big boat contract, I gave you the biggest boat contract in years, and a lot of people didn't want it to go here. Everybody wanted it. I gave it. She never called me. She was the one person that should have been calling me. She never called me. I gave it to you for other reasons. But we have somebody that's running. Number one, he's central casting, you have to say. This guy is central casting, and he's smart, and he's tough, and he's a hero, and he's a success, and he'll make an incredible senator for you and your wonderful people who I know so well in Wisconsin. Eric Hovde is great. Come on up, Eric. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's give President Trump a big Wisconsin hello! You know, all of us are here for one reason. And it's the reason why this man is going through all that he's gone through. He's been put through hell, attack after attack. Why I'm going through this, why you're showing up here. We love our country. We love America. And what the Democratic Party has become today are a bunch of progressive socialists that are destroying our wonderful country. They have turned our country upside down. What was right has become wrong, and what was wrong has become right. They're damaging our country economically. Under President Trump, your wages increased 7.7%, one of the highest growth rates ever. Under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they've declined by 2.2% because of all their inflation and reckless spending. Under President Trump, the border was almost closed, and he would have gotten the job done.
On a good sunny day, about 100. it makes it look a lot nicer. If not, it
Is that house part of what you have?
no, that's our neighbor.
But they're good and
Yeah, they're good people.
They're good. They don't mind all this stuff.
No,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Pretty good try. You want the right people? That's great.
So each year the families come down and spend the day with the firemen.
So that's a steel beam.
Yeah, from out of the north.
Trade Center.
North.
What a shame that was. What a sad. What a sad.
There is people inside that I believe would like to.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
This is our firehouse. Getting added on.
Press, you're going to follow me this way?
Very polite. Very polite.
Plans for debate too?
It was a great. We had a great debate. We had great poll numbers on the debate, and we enjoyed it. I hope she enjoyed it too, but I enjoyed it. And no, we're looking at it, but you know, when you win, you don't really necessarily have to do it a second time. So we'll see. But we had I thought we had a great debate last night. Thank you very much.
What would need to change for you to agree to a second debate? Would you want different rules? Would you want a different format?
Well, you know, when you don't win, it's like a fighter. When a fighter has a bad fight, gets knocked out, or loses the fight, the first thing he says is, we want a rematch. So we won the debate according to every poll, every single poll. I think that, are we going to do a rematch? I just don't know. But we'll think about it.
Would you still do the one on NBC on September 25th? You proposed that. Are you still committed to that?
I would do NBC. I'd do Fox too. I'd do Fox too. But right now we have to determine whether or not we even want to do it. We had a great night last night. And you see by the poll numbers, it was really fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. Back to the van. Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
Showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special. The most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face. Historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage, Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year, because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because it was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us, and I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. "Thank you, President Xi," exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, "I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks." But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job. but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your
Well, I won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women, who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
President
me,
Harris,
the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud. Just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down. And name calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask you.
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes, sir.
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear. They can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one that caused it, that's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it, because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this. Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more, because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So, if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal and, in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction, to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life, to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
Thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She
please.
has a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're
I
going
just need
to move
respond
on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up, they wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and we, over the last 4 years, have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed, for the first time, Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it,
Vice President Harris,
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
The ABC News presidential debate will continue after this. live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, that is a wrap on the Harris-Trump presidential debate, now in the books.
Here with us tonight for post-debate analysis, Brit Hume, Dana Perino, Harold Ford Jr., Laura Ingraham, Jesse Waters, plus Sean Hannity will be with us live from the spin room. Well, the topics: inflation, abortion, immigration, January 6th. It took about 40 minutes to get to a question pressing Vice President Harris on the list of changing policies from when she ran for president in 2019, about an hour before foreign policy came up. The first question of the debate, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Never fully received an answer there. However, Vice President Harris was clearly well prepared, practiced, on the offensive much of the night. Former President Trump did take a lot of the bait that she threw out in some of those answers, but he pointed time and again, as he did there at the end, about what she has or has not done as vice president. The question now is, how much does this move the needle?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be said that she was really never held to the fire. She was not pressed by the moderators on her past positions and how she got from a very progressive, most progressive senator to where she is now. And that falls on ABC. And I think there were moments when it felt like they were helping her out and they were not helping him out. There were times when he didn't pivot as well as he should have to move on to some of the points that he no doubt wanted to make. He went down a few cat and dog holes rather than rabbit holes tonight, which will be discussed, no doubt. I thought the strongest moments were foreign policy, Iran, when he talked about Ukraine, Afghanistan, and that close. Why haven't you done it?
Okay, let's go around the horn. Brit Hume, thoughts?
Well, I thought the single question that needed to be answered tonight was, Madam Vice President, why have you changed your position? Give us your thoughts on why you changed your position, not just on the small handful of issues that were raised by the moderators, but on a range of other issues. There were like 2 questions on the whole thing all evening. She never had to account for her changes. Never.
She said she'd go down the list. She never really...
She never did. Now, look, make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. He rose to the bait repeatedly when she baited him, something I'm sure his advisors had begged him not to do. In the first debate when Biden attacked him, he just kept his cool and kept going. In this debate, he rose to debating, and we heard so many of the old grievances that we'd long thought that Trump had learned were not winners politically. Mm-hmm. And there they all were, talking about how he didn't lose the election and all that. I mean, my sense is that she came out of this in pretty good shape. Now, how long this will last and is anybody's guess. But for tonight, at least, this was pretty much her night.
You're saying she had a good night?
I'm saying she certainly did.
Sean Hannity is in the spin room. Thoughts on this debate, Sean?
Disagree on other parts of what he said. I think the biggest loser in the debate, and we talked about this pre-debate, is ABC. The fact that we didn't get to fundamental, strong positions that Kamala Harris had taken on very deep and profound issues involving the economy and immigration and ending private health care and defund and dismantle. There was a lot of cliche, a lot of rehearsal that I saw in her performance. Okay, that's fine. That was anticipated. There were a lot of lies that she told about abortion, about Project 2025, about gun confiscation, and that was frustrating on a lot of fronts. I think that the biggest epic fail here is that, we're now 50 days in, and early voting, for example, we're in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania tonight, starts 1 week from tonight, and then it rolls out in all these other swing states that matter. The fact that we don't know if she still supports, free housing, health care, education, and sex change operations for illegal immigrants is unfathomable to me after an hour-and-a-half debate. Does she still support defund, dismantle, no bail laws? Do we have an answer on no fracking and no drilling? She didn't say that in 2000. Even CNN fact-checked her after her 16-minute and 29-second debate. We don't have answers on the economy, Bidenomics being a great success. President Trump, I thought, was effective on the issue of, okay, 3.5 years you've been vice president. Why haven't you gotten these things done? And in many, many ways, that pass that she's gotten has been the greatest disservice, I think, tonight to the American people. That's on ABC Disney. That really shouldn't be the other candidate's job to be to be challenging them, especially when you have muted microphones. We don't know anything about Kamala Harris, and that's frustrating. I didn't hear you. What?
No, that's it. We were listening to you.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Let's go to Harold Ford Jr. Harold, your takeaway from tonight.
So I agree with Britt. This what has to be thought of by supporters of Donald Trump and people in that campaign as a disappointment. June 27th, we talked about before, was a different kind of collapse for Joe Biden. In some ways, this has to be thought of as a collapse in some ways. I got reaction from Republican friends. The two common things were train wreck and he needs this to end. These are people who support him, and I think will continue to support him. I said about Joe Biden that night that he seemed all over the place. He seemed unprepared and unorganized. I get the sense. I think ABC, the moderators, could have done a better job. But it's almost like if you're in a basketball game and you go up against playing a team that's taller than you, you don't complain at the end of the game. They're taller than us. We knew that before. He's used to people piling on him. He just didn't seem like he was ready. If you're a voter watching tonight, I was reminded of the great Dennis Green, the former coach of the Vikings, who said they are who we thought they were. And Donald Trump tonight was that guy. Two, she conveyed the calm. She conveyed a preparation. Did she answer all the questions about the switches? No. But I would have thought that he would have raised some of those. I know we said, well, should he have to do that? When you're in a fight for what you believe is the fight for the country, in the soul of the country, then you have to be willing to do those things. Finally, she was tenacious on Russia. She had clarity about the future of the country. He was a little too gloomy, I thought. And when asked, I saw around the table, I've never heard Donald Trump not be definitive about a set of plans. He said, I have concepts of a plan. Here we are, 56 days from an election. You've been president before. He's got to recover from this, and we'll see if there's another debate. I hope the two of you are moderating if there is another debate. And if I'm him, I'm asking for one.
Speaking
tomorrow.
of which, senior advisor to the Harris campaign, Brian Fallon, just sending out, that was fun, let's do it again in October. To that point, Fox has officially invited both campaigns to a debate in October. We have sent a formal invitation, as we had before, and we've renewed that specifically for a debate to be hosted on Fox News in October. We hope they take it up.
Seems like the American people would love another opportunity to see these candidates. It's been such a short window, and they deserve as many opportunities as possible. We certainly hope that they will take us up on that.
Jesse, your thoughts?
I don't think the American people are watching and thinking any of these people won. This was rough. This was pretty intense at times. She started off shaky. She regained her footing. But I thought she was going to come out with some of these memorable lines. All the memorable lines were from Donald Trump. Run, spot, run. Shh, shh, I'm speaking. Does that sound familiar? Wake Joe Biden up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and go get him to sign this thing to close the border. I took a bullet because you said I was a threat to democracy. And they're eating the pets. You know, you watch this thing, if you're a Democrat, you're like, oh, she did a great job. She was much more forceful than Joe Biden. If you're a Republican, you look at this and you're like, that's Donald Trump. He had some moments where you were like, oh my God, where are we going with this? And then he just had some great knockouts. And so this race just got tighter.
That's probably true. We're going to see what exactly that looks like. We are just getting started on our analysis, a pivotal night in the 2024 campaign. Our coverage continues right after this very short break.
Stay with us.
Kamala Harris was given one important job as vice president: monitor and control our southern border. How did she do? Did she take the job seriously? Did she do all she could to protect American citizens from an invasion? Did she do anything at all?
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Here's her grim scorecard: murders, rapes, attacks on children, a 12-year-old girl in Texas, a mother of 5 in Maryland, a nursing student in Georgia, all savagely murdered by those Biden and Harris led into our country unlawfully.
We have a secure border.
Kamala Harris was and is a complete failure at her job. Now she's asking us for a promotion? Who in their right mind would give it to her? Restoration PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Welcome back. That was something, wasn't it? Final thoughts, Dana Perino.
I think he got harder questions than she did, but he missed more opportunities. And he took all the bait and none of the opportunities. She pivoted better. But there were a couple of things, like, for example, when Harris brought up Charlottesville and the Fine People hoax, that was a great opportunity for the moderators to push back, because that's an obvious one, and they didn't do that. So I think that if there's a grievance on that part, you'll see it. I do think that he won on points on his first answer about the economy, and then his last answer was good. So if you only watch those two parts, and if you're like first impression and last impression, you might leave with an impression that he did all right. I'm surprised that her team came out already and offered a second debate, because in my opinion, I don't think she needs it, because she has shown that she doesn't have to do anything. She doesn't have to do media or anything. And now all of her surrogates and her spokespeople can say, she already answered that. She already answered that. So they could just try to figure out a way to coast, bring all that money in, and try to spend it and try to win Pennsylvania, which is key for her.
Yeah, but, you know, it's all about the swing states, Laura, obviously. And if her people look at tonight and they say, look, she did well, her confidence is growing, she wants to reach out and try to win those swing states, we should do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of all this, she prepared for a couple weeks. She moved the points a little bit on the betting markets. But in the end, we all know what we knew before, that ABC's goal tonight was to help Kamala Harris. And ABC did help Kamala Harris. Now, did Donald Trump miss a few opportunities? Absolutely. Did she miss a few opportunities? Yes, she did, especially when he said, you're right, I fired those people, because I fire people who are incompetent. I thought that was one of the strongest moments of the debate. There's very little accountability in all of government. And this has happened across administrations. So I think in the end, if the steel workers in Pennsylvania want to keep their jobs, if the auto workers in Michigan want to keep their jobs, they see this debate and they see one person standing up for them, and it's still Donald Trump.
But Britt, you know, you look at the CNN interview with Dana Bash that she does alongside her nominee, Tim Walz. This is a different person who was well prepped,
absolutely
well prepared, had answers, and knew where she was going.
Not only a different person from the person she was in that interview on CNN, but a different person from the absolute dunderhead so many of us thought she was during her conduct as vice president, when she would come out with these ludicrous statements that started nowhere and ended in midair.
Unburdened by the past.
Unburdened by common sense. And here she was tonight. She was composed. She was prepared. She kept her cool. She saw advantages. She took them. She baited him successfully, which is the story of the debate, in my view. So she came out ahead in this, in my opinion. No doubt. Now, whether it'll move the needle in the race, very few things seem to, but that remains to be seen.
What are you going to say? Does it move the needle, though?
It may or may not. But think about this. Most people didn't know her. They heard the lead up that she was going to be unprepared, that she was a cackler, that she had mismanaged things. You watched this tonight, and you don't know much about this. You say, all right, when am I going to see that person? Because you saw a different person this evening. Now, I'm delighted that there's going to be a second debate. At least there's an eagerness and a willingness on the part of them to do it again. Because I think these questions should be asked of the vice president about the shift in positions. But what I don't get, and I respect everybody on this panel, why didn't he ask these questions of her? I mean, if you believe that your candidacy is that important to the country, I didn't say be mean-spirited about it. And he had some moments where he was a little mean. He could have asked the question about the shifting positions. Now, should the moderators have done it? No doubt. But if I was on that stage, I would have asked those questions. Tonight, she won.
If she's asking for another debate, though, they don't think she won this debate, hands down. They would be, to Dana's point, saying,
we're
mic
done.
Drop. We're done. Yep. They don't think that she's in a position right now to win this race.
Well,
they need another debate.
I don't disagree. I think it's an even race. I just think she won tonight.
Let's hope that they say yes. And again, we have the formal invite out there. This has been quite something because there was a lot of buildup to this moment.
Yeah.
There was a lot of buildup. The question is, how many people watched for how long? And how much did it move this race? Because it's as tight a race as we have ever seen in this country.
And last time we sat here, Joe Biden was running against President Trump. So who knows what's going to happen next. Thank you all for tuning in tonight and joining us for the presidential debate.
Hannity is up right now.
All right, thank you, Brett. Thank you, Martha. Welcome to Hannity. We are live. We are in the spin room, and we are in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the first and only scheduled debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is officially now in the books. In just a moment, we're going to get reaction from Senator Marco Rubio, Senator Ted Cruz, Trump's running mate J.D. Vance, and Robert Kennedy Jr. But first, in case you missed it, here's how it all went down.
I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question.
you
Would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And then now in the United States, fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay?
All right, what you didn't hear tonight was any substance from Kamala Harris about pretty much anything. She delivered a lot of pre-rehearsed, memorized platitudes, lines, plenty of attacks. This was, I hate Trump, I hate Trump, I hate Trump, and I hate Trump more. Anyway, with lots of kind of weird faces and expressions, we still don't have answers where she stands on defunding the police, electric vehicle mandates, mandatory gun confiscation, which she lied about, Medicare for all, the $93 trillion Green New Deal she co-sponsored in the U.S. Senate with Bernie Sanders, banning plastic straws, reducing red meat consumption up to a 70 or 80% income tax rate. Bidenomics, we call it Bidenomics, and we're proud of it. Offshore drilling, fracking, decriminalizing illegal immigration, free housing, health care, education, college education, and now sex change surgery provided by taxpayers. We didn't hear about the border wall that she was against, that now she's for, and we didn't hear about illegal immigrants and returning home, late-term abortion. She didn't answer the question about restrictions, about months 7, 8, and 9, and the list goes on and on. Left-wing moderators, the biggest loser of the night, ABC Disney, Bob Iger's network. It was a disgrace. They barely asked her about important issues. We've got 56 days until an election. Early voting starts in this Commonwealth in 7 days. You know, in between so-called fact-checking and clapbacks only against Donald Trump, because Kamala didn't offer any details on her own. As predicted, tonight's debate was 3-on-1. Anyway, joining us now from the spin room, Florida Senator, my senator, free state of Florida, Marco Rubio. Senator, how are you?
Thank you.
He was doing a big gaggle before. I walked over and I'm like, tapping him on the back. He's my senator.
They were impressed. The reporters were impressed.
The biggest, I think, failure for the country tonight was ABC.
Yeah, it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to journalism. I mean, this on issue. I mean, there was times where they would say, "Donald Trump, why did you do or say this horrible thing?" And then the question to Kamala Harris is, "What do you think about the horrible thing that Donald Trump did?" There was no. Listen, no, they didn't ask her. Grocery bills are up 50% from 2020. 50%. What do you say about that, Kamala Harris? How are you going to deal with that? They didn't ask her about the Afghan. They let her get away with this lie that Joe Biden didn't withdraw us from Afghanistan. Joe Biden was run out of Afghanistan in humiliating fashion. Even the fact checkers were wrong, where she said, oh, there's no state in the country where there's a lot. There are multiple states in this country, including Tim Walz's Minnesota, where if a baby is born in a botched abortion, they allow the baby to die. Okay? And then they let her get away with not answering what restrictions she would be supportive of.
See, this is a frustrating thing is when you have 3-on-1 and you have a fact like you just laid out about Tim Walz and his position on late-term abortion, and Donald Trump was 100% right. He was talking about Governor Northam. Well, first the baby will be born and we'll make the baby comfortable, and then the doctor will talk to the mother. But that's not the point. Months 7, 8, and 9. Even people I know that are pro-choice, that would be infanticide.
Of course. But here's the bottom line. Americans know Donald Trump. He was their president. He's been campaigning out since 2016. They know his positions. They know very little about Kamala Harris. Tonight, for the first time, despite the best efforts of these moderators, Americans began to learn that this was someone who was raising money to bail rioters out of jail. This was someone who said she wanted to defund ICE. This was someone who basically said that we should be paying for the sex change operations of illegal migrants in detention. This was someone who accused the Border Patrol of whipping Haitian migrants at the border. And this is someone that has been in the White House for 4 years, talking about all these things she's going to do. They've done none of them. She talks about immigration in this bill. They have the power in the law right now to enforce our immigration laws. She has no campaign plan. She just unveiled her policy plan. It was literally, I'm not saying this, New Republic, a liberal left-wing magazine is saying it. She literally cut and pasted from the Joe Biden
she did
platform.
cut and paste it.
And so think about it.
But
She is
Senator,
Joe Biden and worse because of what she stood for in 2019.
56 days. Just bear with me the list. No restrictions on abortion for him and for her and her running mate. Mandatory gun buyback. She lied about that at the end of the debate. No border wall, decriminalizing illegal immigration, free housing, health care, education, free college in Minnesota, legal driver's licenses. We've had murder, we've had rape, we've had violent crime, and now we're going to offer what? Taxpayer-funded sex change operations. She supports reparations. The $93 trillion Green New Deal, which would be the end of capitalism, she co-sponsored it. Government health care for all, the elimination of private health insurance. Right. How does ABC not bring that up?
Not a single one of those things was asked.
How did they not bring up?
Well,
she said
again,
we got to not say radical Islamic terrorism or illegal aliens.
But President Trump did a good job of injecting that in there. And in the end of the debate, he said the most important thing, and that is she's been there for 4 years. All these things she's promising, they haven't done. And frankly, she wouldn't answer the most important question she was asked all night. Are Americans, she was asked this, are Americans better off today than they were 4 years ago? She didn't even answer it. She went on to talk about how she was born to a middle-class family, raised in Canada for part of that time in what apparently is not a middle-class neighborhood. But nonetheless, she went into her biography. And I think she was exposed tonight. The talking heads, they analyze this because they all want to pretend like Kamala Harris was born on July 24th of this year. She has a record. She has a record as a senator, and she has a record as vice president. And Americans tonight got a glimpse of what she really believes, what she really stands for, and what direction she'll actually take our country. And I think that was a big win, big win.
Does this move the needle in your view?
I think it does because there's a lot of voters. Remember, voters in the real world don't analyze this like the people that talk on cable news. They're viewing it in their mindset, okay, who's this lady? And they start hearing these things. Hold on a second, she helped bail out rioters? Hold on a second, she wouldn't answer the question about at what point should an abortion not be allowed, the day before the due date. She wouldn't answer that question. They pick up on these things. And for her to brag about Afghanistan, she bragged about Afghanistan. Okay, she said Joe Biden got us out. He was run out of there. And not only was he run out of there, we lost $90 billion worth of American equipment that they're parading down the street. There are a lot of real people in the real world who are not political junkies who are going to vote and decide this election, who watched tonight. They saw the man that was president, and they remember their lives were better when he was president. They were safer. They were more prosperous. We were more respected in the world. And then they saw this person. They didn't know a lot about her, and now they're beginning to learn facts about her that I think will be decisive.
Senator, great to see you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Now, according to the Washington Post, the Harris campaign is now saying they want a second debate. What does that tell us? Joining us with more reaction to tonight's debate, Texas Senator Ted Cruz is with us. Senator, how do you interpret that and your overall thoughts on the debate tonight?
Well, listen, I'm skeptical that Kamala's team will have her do a second debate. I think they're going to back out of that. I think they're going to send her back to Joe Biden's basement. I think we probably will not see Kamala emerge again from the basement, sort of like the groundhog in her shadow. She's not going to come out again from the basement until election night, other than to go for rallies and read from teleprompters. And listen, I got to say tonight, what Kamala demonstrated is, number one, she cannot defend her disastrous record. Her record is an absolute train wreck. So instead what she did, what we saw tonight in this, quote, debate, was her repeating memorized set pieces from her stump speech and from her convention speech. The very opening question, the most important question in any election, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? She refused to answer that because she couldn't answer that, because nobody, unless you are a Mexican drug lord, nobody else is better off than they were 4 years ago. So she didn't answer that. Instead, she's like, I'm from a middle-class family. I want things better for you. And no aspect on inflation. She didn't address that she cast the tie-breaking vote on trillions of dollars of spending that caused inflation, hurting Americans across this country. On energy, she didn't address that she and Joe Biden have waged war on American energy over and over and over again, driving up the cost of gasoline and everything else for Americans. On the border, she didn't address her own personal responsibility, the invasion, the crime, the murders, the women sexually assaulted, the children brutalized. She didn't take responsibility for any of that. And then on foreign policy, I actually thought on foreign policy she was the weakest. It was absurd when she turned to Donald Trump and says, well, everyone knows you were weak and ineffective. Listen, if Donald Trump were still in the White House, the two wars that broke out under her leadership and Joe Biden's would not have happened. Russia would not have invaded Ukraine, and we would not have the war in Israel. And she took no responsibility for that weakness, nor did she have a word to say about the over $100 billion that she and Joe Biden have flowed to Iran. All of her records she ran away from, and I got to say, the ABC moderators were complicit in her running a completely fact-free debate performance.
I think that's well said, Senator. I mean, and there's so much that we don't understand. Defund, dismantle, reimagine, ICE, the police, the mini-app. They wanted to talk about January 6th. There was 600 riots in the summer of 2020. She tweets out the Minnesota bail fund 4 days after the police precinct is burned. And, you know, they won't stop. They shouldn't stop. We're not going to stop. All things that she said. 18 to 24-year-olds are stupid. Abolish the filibuster to pass the Green New Deal. Inflation is transitory. The border's secure. We're proud of Bidenomics. The country needs to be woke. We'll never deport illegals. And now we're going to give free sex change operations to convicted felons and illegal immigrants. How's that going to go over in your state of Texas? I would imagine not so well.
Look, it goes over terribly. But what you just did, what I just did, is what the Trump campaign needs to do between now and Election Day, which is lay out the actual facts of her record, because she won't confront them. So for example, on abortion, she said, no, I'm not for late-term abortions, 8 and 9 month abortions. Well, she has voted for legislation that would legalize abortion up until the moment of birth. When she says, I don't know what you're talking about, abortion after birth, well, Kamala Harris voted against the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, which says that if in the course of an abortion a baby is alive, is breathing, is outside the womb, you can't just kill the baby. She voted no. And so her actual record needs to be systematically laid out when it comes to crime. This is someone who has supported defund the police. This is someone who has supported defund ICE. This is someone, Kamala Harris, who compared ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, to the KKK. But we need to make sure those facts get before the American people, because ABC is not going to do it. The corporate media is not going to do it. And listen, her radical record is radical the same way my opponent, Colin Allred, who's running against me, both of them vote repeatedly in favor of open borders. Both of them vote for trillions of dollars of spending we don't have. Both of them vote for the war against oil and gas and American energy. Both of them vote in favor of defunding the police. That's their record. But I got to tell you, the left right now, they are flooding money to Kamala Harris. They're flooding money to my opponent because they want to deceive the American people. Both Kamala Harris and my opponent are running ads with Donald Trump's border wall in it, even though both of them have opposed it their entire careers. The hypocrisy is enormous, which is why we need to bring the facts back up and prosecute this case on the merits.
All right, Senator Ted Cruz, we appreciate you being with us. Joining us now is 2024 Republican vice presidential nominee, Senator J.D. Vance. Senator, great to see you. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Getting ready for your debate?
Yeah. Got a lot of pointers this evening.
Okay. All right, let's get your overall take. I think the thing that's frustrating to me and a lot of people, well, number one, I think 3-on-1 was a little frustrating. Yeah. Number two, the topics that are so relevant, the radical positions that she's taken. Sure. When I first interviewed you, the first interview you did, when you were vice president, when you announced to be the candidate, I asked you every hard question, and you answered every one of them, and I kept you longer. because it was supposed to be 10 minutes. I kept you 30. I was being very nice. And so all these radical positions she's taken, still no answers. We have not moved the ball an inch. It is frustrating.
It is frustrating, and the moderators, I think, did a terrible job of following up on that. But look, I think President Trump did a good job at reminding the American people that this is a person who wanted to ban fracking. Here we are in Pennsylvania. She supported banning fracking. She supported defunding the police. She supported opening the border. And I think that though the moderators didn't do their job, I think President Trump did do his job in reminding the American people that she has taken a number of radical positions that, as he joked, she's run away from. Now she's acting like Donald Trump. She's about to put on a MAGA hat because she realizes
By the way,
radical.
That was a pretty good line.
It was my favorite moment of the debate. But she is a radical who is trying to run towards Donald Trump's positions because she knows that's what's popular, but it's not what she actually believes. And I think that if you go to her performance, Sean, the most striking part of it is if you actually listen to what she said, it was platitude after slogan. There was no substance. How is she going to lower grocery prices for American citizens?
Rehearse, cliched,
Yes.
use everything that you want to say. And the bottom line is fundamental. I hate Trump.
That's exactly right. And also, look, both of them have records. That's what's different about this election, almost any other election in my lifetime. You have two people with a record. Donald Trump is proud of his record. Kamala Harris is running away from her record because her record is higher grocery prices, homes that are unaffordable, a wide open southern border, rising fentanyl deaths. This is happening because of her failed leadership. And all we need to remind the American people of, and I think Donald Trump did a great job of this tonight, is the reason why these problems happen is because Kamala Harris failed to do her job.
You know, the thing is, she's 50 days, and prior to tonight, she does one interview, no press conferences. You're out there every day.
Yep.
Between you and President Trump, you're nearing, 50 combined?
Sure.
And it's still a mystery. It's like the candidate protection program, and the media keeps her in there. You know, I have all of these files, the Kamala files, the Walls files, them in their own words. This was all available to ABC tonight. You said this about fracking. You said this about drilling. You said this about sex change operations that taxpayers pay for criminals and for illegal immigrants, free housing, health care, education for illegal immigrants, the elimination of private health care. All of these positions that she's taken, you know, and it's amazing that we're this far, that we're this close to an election, we don't have these answers.
That's exactly right. Well, she's running a campaign based on vibes, and she's running
vibes. What the hell is a vibe? Are we in the 60s?
It feels like it sometimes. I feel like watching Kamala Harris like I've taken some psychedelics, but look, she is a total disaster, Sean, and she runs away from her record. This is the most striking thing is if you're the vice president, you've been in power for 3.5 years, is she running by saying, look what we did to lower your grocery prices, look what we did to make the world more secure?
She can't.
She can't because her record is one of failure. And we just have to remind the American people of this, Sean. I mean, look, I think if you watch the debate, you're sitting at home, you're an undecided voter, what you saw is a person who repeats slogans instead of respecting you enough to treat you like an adult. You know, Donald Trump, and he gets criticized by the left for this, by the way, Donald Trump actually answers the questions because he respects the American people enough to treat them like citizens. That's why he does everyday debate. That's why he goes out there and talks to people, because he thinks that you ought to try to win the people's vote, not just have it given to you.
She also told a lot of lies about Project 2025. Project 2025 is her radical agenda for her. A national abortion ban. That wasn't true. She lied about her saying in 2000, no, I didn't say I'm for fracking. Mandatory gun buyback, she said at the end of the debate. Oh, no, I never said that. I'm a gun owner. I'm like, that is exactly what you said. Yes, you did. It's on tape. We have it. We played it.
That's right. Well, that's the entire trick here, right, is the media is helping Kamala Harris run away from her record, but we have her on tape saying all these things, Sean. And by the way, when she said that she supported a ban on fracking, then she changed her view in 2020, that's another complete fabrication. She has never once changed her view that she wanted to ban fracking. And you're an American sitting at home.
She became the presumptive nominee.
Well, that's right. She changed her mind in 2024, but not in 2020, so another complete fabrication. But think about this. If you're a Pennsylvania energy worker, or you're an American suffering from high utility and energy bills, Kamala Harris is telling you she wants to make you pay more and she wants to put these energy workers out of a job. It's a disgrace, but it's what she said in her own words, and and we've got a record of success to run on. We just have to keep on doing it.
Let me ask you this, because I think this is very important. So with 56 days, but we have early voting. We're 1 week away where early voting starts here in Pennsylvania. You're spending a lot of time in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
Sure.
And one has to wonder, to what extent has her past statements and radical positions penetrated the consciousness of the American people?
Look, I think they've penetrated a little bit, and it's our job over the remaining 56 days of the campaign. And you're right, early voting starts in just a couple of weeks. It's our job to make it penetrate. Sean, we have to do this every single day. We have to remind the American people of what she said. Look, this is not complicated. We just have to tell the truth. Kamala Harris wanted to ban fracking. She wanted to defund the police. She said it all on video. We just have to remind people of what she said. And by the way, Sean, it's not just reminding people what she said. It's reminding what Donald Trump did and has plans to do again. We had prosperity, we had peace, we had the American dream that started to feel alive again thanks to Donald Trump's leadership. Sean, I believe this. I think we've got the best workers, the best history and cultural traditions in the world. We've got the best natural resources in the most beautiful country. We have got failed leadership that is ruining our great inheritance as a country. We just need better leadership. It's that simple. Good to see you, man.
Senator, good to see you. Appreciate it. We'll be seeing you out on the campaign trail. All right, one issue that did get a lot of attention from ABC's far-left moderators was the weaponization of our Department of Justice. Donald Trump still made it a point of emphasis. Take a look.
Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
All right, joining us now, someone who knows firsthand about the weaponization of justice, live from the spin room, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Great to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, Sean.
You left your party, a party that was near and dear to your father, to your uncle. I think it has no resemblance to the Democratic Party today. And this is the frustrating part about tonight, the radicalization, the views stated by Kamala. They weren't asked by the moderators. To me, it was a failed opportunity. I think the American people were failed tonight.
I was disappointed by the evident bias of the moderators, who were fact-checking constantly, kind of trivialities by President Trump, but didn't, as far as I saw, they didn't fact-check Vice President Harris a single time. But you're right, Sean, the party that I grew up in doesn't exist anymore. The party of Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy was a party of peace. It was the party of resisting the corporate subversion of American democracy. It was the party of civil rights and constitutional rights, particularly censorship, very opposed to censorship and surveillance. It was the party of protecting the most vulnerable people in our society, including particularly children. Today, the Democratic Party is the party of war. It's the party of censorship. It's the party of surveillance. We saw Dick Cheney and John Bolton endorse, along with 255 neocons, endorse Vice President Harris this week. They came out of exile, where they were sent after the Patriot Act. They were sent after the war in Iraq, the biggest foreign policy debacle in American history. And they're not endorsing Vice President Harris because they've changed their minds. They're endorsing her because she represents their worldview: more censorship, more war, more surveillance, and less liberty and constitutional rights.
You learned a lot in the course of your campaign. They talk about democracy in peril, but everything, the entire force of the Democratic establishment, if you will, they just went in for the political, death of your campaign. They did not want you to get to. They didn't want you to get at first base.
That's the other
ballot.
That's the other thing, is that they've abandoned democracy. At the Democratic Party is now about centralized control. It's about losing faith in the demos, the people, and about abolishing elections, abolishing our ability to hear different points of view, to hear dissent. In my case, of course, they got rid of the primaries. They literally abolished many of the primaries so that President Biden wouldn't have to debate me, wouldn't have to run against me.
Let me dip in. I guess Kamala's at one of her watch parties or something. I don't know what she's saying. Let's just dip in for a second.
And let me just say that I think we all know that tonight was a night that highlights something that you all have been working so hard on. We have folks here who have been knocking on doors. Well, you know. But we have a lot of work to do, okay? And tonight, I think, highlighted for the American people what's at stake. I started the debate by talking about it, and it became apparent, I think, throughout that about an hour and a half, that...
So, look, obviously, she's going to go out there and her team. The thing that I learned about her tonight is, being hidden away for days and days and days on end. You can learn your rehearsed lines, and it doesn't matter if you tell the truth, because she wasn't fact-checked. She told a lot of lies about Trump in 2025, lies about mandatory gun buybacks, which she did support, lying about fracking, lying about a national abortion ban that Donald Trump doesn't support. And, it's hard when you've got 3-on-1 like that. But that's what I expect. She's been in this campaign 50 days. We only have 56 days till Election Day, but early voting, for example, I've been pointing out tonight, starts right here 1 week from tonight. There's a lot of information about her stated views in her own words that people don't know about. What would you advise the Trump people to do to get that out?
Here was the most telling part of the debate to me, which she didn't get fact-checked on. The first question, are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? There's no metric you can use to make that case. And she was allowed to then go and give this kind of biographical sketch of herself without ever asking that question. And they never demanded that she ask it. Today, we have double the inflation that we had under President Trump.
Yeah. All right, hang on 1 second. President Trump is in the spin room. And let's listen in. Do we have audio of that?
Foreign trade was everything. And I think it was the best debate I've ever personally that I've had. We're getting polls that show 92 to 6, 88 to 11. We're having a lot of great polls that just came out. Full polls and lots of other polls, but you see the polls. A very important debate. Now, she wants to do another one because she got beaten tonight, but I don't know. Why wouldn't you look at her? The polls are indicating that we got 90%, 60%, 72%, 71%, and 89%.
Where are you getting these numbers from?
Very good. But beyond the polls, I felt very good. I had a good time doing it. I hate to speak about our country so negatively, but that's what happened. They ruined our country. They've destroyed our country. So I hope you're all having a good time. It was a very interesting...
Did she get under your skin, sir?
So confident you won tonight. Why are you here? Why not let the performance speak for itself?
Well, I think it did, but people said, would I come here? And I made an obligation to a couple of people to do their show. But it was I thought it was a great night.
What about Taylor Swift?
When do you actually stand to endorsement of Kamala Harris?
I have no idea.
Mr. President, when Republicans are complaining about moderators, does that mean it wasn't a good night? Were you not prepared?
No, I thought the moderators were very unfair, but it basically was 3-on-1. But I thought they were very unfair to moderators. Everybody did. But despite that, they're saying that
Mr. President,
why not a second debate?
I assume the moderators would be there. That right there is the worst of all these.
Mr. President,
why not a second debate?
She wants a second debate because she lost tonight very bad. They immediately called for a second debate because they lost. So we'll, think about that. But she immediately called for a second. Look,
if she lost, will you do it? Will you do it?
The worst poll that we've had was 71 that I see. 71% to like 24 or 25.
Mr. President, did she get under your skin?
President Trump, right here. President Trump.
All right, Joe, we can't really hear a lot of it. I've just been told President Trump may make his way over here and join us live, which would be great. But first, we have the free state of Florida my governor, Ron DeSantis, is with us. Governor DeSantis, great to have you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, Sean. Good to see you.
You know, you kind of had your own little version of a kind of big moment debate with Gavin Newsom, which I thought was a lot of fun for me to be able to be a part of and moderate. These debates are interesting. I would argue that was far more substantive than Kamala Harris and cliches and no questions about the most radical positions any one person has ever taken in her life. And that, to me, is a failure of ABC. I think they're the biggest loser of everybody tonight, and they did a disservice to the American people because there's so much that they did not ask her that we need answers to. Do you still support the Green New Deal? That would destroy capitalism. Do you still support, government-run health care for all? It would eliminate private health insurance. Do you still support, free housing, health care, education, and sex change operations for illegals? No fracking, no drilling, defund, dismantle. I mean, there's so much there. I'm at this point getting frustrated that nobody will pin her down or even ask her. That's frustrating to me.
Well, right. I mean, there's different ways you can moderate. When CNN did the debate with Biden and Trump, I'll give Dana Bash and Tapper credit. They asked questions. They got out of the way. They were substantive. They really weren't biased. And for CNN, I think a lot of people were surprised. This one, they only asked the follow-ups to Donald Trump to try to pin him down. They tried to fact-check him, but fact-checking him on things that he was right on, like some of the late-term abortion laws in some of the liberal states. Donald Trump was right about that, and they incorrectly fact-checked him. They never fact-checked Kamala Harris. She repeated lies like the Charlottesville fine people hoax and other things. Never called her to account. But you're right, Sean. From the very first question, she was asked, are Americans better off today than they were 4 years ago? She did not answer the question. She started rambling on about growing up in a middle-class family, which I'm sure is nice, but that doesn't answer why you have been in power for 3.5 years and Americans are worse off. They did not pin her down and ask follow-up questions on all her flip-flops. She acts like she's always been a big supporter of fracking, never addressed her open borders past. And so, yes, it was a 3-on-1 debate. It was disappointing that she didn't have her feet held to the fire by the moderators. They went out of their way to try to do that to Donald Trump. But I think people that take away from this debate, even with all that, Donald Trump is the candidate that's going to change things. Kamala Harris is the candidate that, as President Trump said in his closing statement, she's been there 3.5 years. Why hasn't she fixed any of these problems during that time? She does not have an answer to that question.
It doesn't. But, at some point, isn't it really the moderators, isn't that their job? I mean, if you say you want a $93 trillion Green New Deal and you're going to eliminate the filibuster to pass it, shouldn't we ask that? If you want to mandate, government health care and eliminate private insurance, shouldn't that have come up in this debate? If you want sex change operations paid for by taxpayers for convicted criminals and illegal immigrants, don't you think that would come up in a debate?
Yeah, well, it was all about looking at all this stuff through a left of center prism. So they were hitting Trump on, of course, January 6th. They were hitting Trump on some of his statements about holding people accountable. All these different things, that's right out of what a left of center person would do. They never hit her from the right. She took more liberal positions when she ran for president than Bernie Sanders did on a wide variety of issues. And yet they acted like that wasn't even worth bringing up, especially as she's trying to present herself to the American people as someone much different than the U.S. senator who took all those very left-wing positions, whether it's abolishing private health insurance, whether it's abolishing fracking, or whether it's paying for, with taxpayer dollars, as you mentioned, Sean, sex change operations for illegal aliens. You've got to be kidding me, and yet they never broach those subjects in a serious way.
All right, Governor DeSantis, we appreciate you being with us. Joining us now is RNC co-chair Laura Trump. There is a chance, I think your father-in-law is making his way over here if he can get through the mob.
Crazier things have happened, Sean, so we'll see, yes.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, you watched the debate. Let's get your overall view.
Yeah, I mean, it was 3-on-1. It was sort of what we expected. Kamala Harris got up there. She lied. She brought up Project 2025, not just once, but multiple times, knowing full well that's something Donald Trump has disavowed. He says it had nothing to do with it. And unfortunately for the American people, I don't think there was anything they took away from this debate tonight that was substantive. There wasn't an opportunity for, there to be a debate about how is your life going to be better if one of these two people is in the White House. Now, Donald Trump, fortunately, has been president for 4 years, and he was able to remind people how much better off their life was and how much worse off you are right now while Kamala Harris is in the White House. But 3-on-1, what we expected, and a lot of platitudes, not a lot of information from Kamala.
Yeah, you look at it from so many different angles, and as I've been bringing it up throughout the night tonight, I mean, all these radical positions, she's gone 50-plus days without answering those questions. We have early voting starting in this state in a week. And is this something that you have to communicate through ads? Is this something that, they're saying that they want a second debate. I don't know if I trust anything that they say, to be honest. I mean, she told a lot of lies tonight about President Trump.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they didn't fact check a single one of those, Sean. Imagine that. Look, Donald Trump would love another debate. He would love 3 debates because that's traditional what you do for presidential elections. Obviously, we know that that's probably not going to happen. But what we're going to do is we're going to have to talk to the American people. And guess who's here? Donald Trump himself came because he couldn't actually talk to the American people.
You're going to take your time, but I hate
yeah,
that.
that's okay. You can have it.
All right, we'll talk with President Trump in just a second, but the former president called out Kamala's election year flip-flops and even joked about sending her a MAGA hat. Take a look.
We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country.
I feel good.
All right, joining us now, he's on the set in the spin room himself. Did you have fun?
I had a good time. I think it was our best debate ever. I thought it was really good. We had 3 against 1, but I anticipated.
Let's talk about that. 3 against 1, and all of her radical positions they leave on the table.
Yeah. No, we had a lot of negative kind of stuff. Look, I saw on your show last night, they had 100% positive coverage on ABC. And I had 94% negative coverage.
93% negative.
I exaggerate.
You got an extra percent non-negative. As you were with her tonight, to think that we come out of this debate and we have no answer to her co-sponsoring the Green New Deal, $93 trillion, yeah. I say the end of capitalism, to come out of this, government-run health care and no answer to eliminating private health insurance. fact
we
that
brought them all up. You know, every
We
one
did
of the
bring a
things
lot of
that
it up.
we brought it all up. And I also ended with, why hasn't she done it before? Why didn't she fix, you know, she's there complaining. Why didn't she fix all these
Were you
things
really
that she's
willing to
complaining
leave the stage and go home if she was going to go fix it in Washington?
No, you know what? I would have left. I would have said, go home and fix it. I'll leave with you. Okay? But she's not going to fix it. So she's complaining about all the stuff that's wrong with the country, and they've been there for 3.5 years. And I put that, I wanted to save that for my last little summation. And I actually mentioned in there, too. I just thought it was a great debate. I think we showed the weakness. But the sad part is they're destroying our country. You know, when you get right down to it. Debate, good debate. I enjoyed it. But it's a very sad thing because our country is in decline. We are really being laughed at all over the world. And that's tough to take.
Do you think it's strange that somebody could support something as radical as sex change operations paid for by taxpayers for convicts and illegal immigrants, and for illegal immigrants, free housing, health care, education, and not get asked a question about it?
But I brought it up.
You did bring it up.
Of course, they weren't so happy when I brought it up, but I brought it up. I brought up the fact that they're doing sex change operations on illegal immigrants. And those are expensive operations, and they shouldn't be done for a lot of reasons.
There were a lot of things said that weren't true about you tonight, that you would support a national abortion ban.
Yeah.
You've never said that.
I never said
that you support Project 25.
Correct.
You never read it? I don't even know what it is either.
I don't want to read it.
Okay, number two, that she said in 2000, I took back my position on banning fracking.
Yep.
No, CNN fact-checked that and said no. The mandatory gun buyback at the end of the debate, she lied about that too.
That's right. That's
And
right.
you
She
did
wants
call
to
her out for a lot of
confiscate. I called her out on everything that you said. I think I got everything out. Now, with all of that being said, I was amazed because I really thought they'd be fair. I have to say, CNN a few weeks ago was sort of fair against Biden. Yeah. But this one was stacked. I figured it would be after watching 100% positive coverage of her. And she's done a terrible job as vice president. And look, she's the worst vice president we've ever had. She was the border czar, the worst border ever in the history of the world, not just in our country. And he's the worst president we've ever had.
So
Sean, they're destroying our country.
I'm very aware. And if we look at her tax plan, which is, okay, price gauging or gouging, and the largest tax increase not only in American history but world history, her campaign is saying tonight, Washington Post is reporting, that she wants a second debate. What's your answer?
She lost. She wants it because she lost.
Do you have an answer?
Well, I don't know. I have to think about it. But if you won the debate, I sort of think maybe I shouldn't do it. Why should I do another debate? She immediately said, we want another debate. That's, you know what happens when you're a prize fighter and you lose? You immediately want a new fight.
You want a rematch.
You want a rematch. The guy that won is sort of happy and thinking about it.
Would you be inclined to say yes, or you
Maybe
don't know?
if it was on a fair network, I would do that. But
I think let Hannity moderate it.
Yeah, no, I think
like
that
I
would be
did
fair.
Newsom and Ron DeSantis.
I think it would be fair. You would be fair, actually.
I would be
you
fair.
want to know the truth.
I'd let you both talk. I'd let you go at each other.
I thought they would be fair. They weren't, but I felt very comfortable.
Yeah.
We have the best policy. She has no policy.
You know, one thing that interested me, because I've known you for a long time, and one of the things that I was watching in you tonight is that you were all business. You know, a lot of times when you're at your rallies or we do a town hall.
Sean, they're destroying our country.
Is that what it was? Is it the seriousness of the moment?
There's nothing to smile about. You know, I'm a good smiler, but there's nothing to smile about. They're destroying. We have 21 million people that have been released into our country, and many of them are criminals and terrorists and people
Laken
from
Riley,
mental institutions.
Rachel Morin, Jocelyn Nungary.
All dead.
I list all these names on the show of people murdered, people raped, people victims of violent crime, names a lot of people never heard of. You've called Laken Riley's family.
I did. I was with him.
Who else you've met other families? You met the families of
I met them all.
Afghanistan.
Nungary. I met.
You met Nungary's family.
Yeah, I met 5 or 6 of them. Not even talking about the 13 soldiers that were killed in Afghanistan, the families of the 13 soldiers, which Biden won't even talk to, and he's the one that caused their death. Just as if he had a pistol in his hand, he and her caused their death. Just as if literally they had a gun in their hand.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. When you're in a situation like that, what is going through your mind? What goes on behind the scenes? How do you prepare for your debates?
Well, I think you sort of I always say I've been preparing all my life for these debates. You know, you can't go in like she did. She goes into a room and she memorized lines, more or less. I thought I got one cute one. I'm talking when I said, I'm talking, when she started interrupting
Well,
me.
she said that to Mike
I
Pence.
wanted to
I'm
get
speaking.
even for that. You know,
Yeah.
that was not very nice what she did. But no, I thought it was, we're getting great reviews.
It's interesting that the one line that really stuck out that did make me laugh out loud is when you said you're going to send her a MAGA hat. There are a lot of positions now, all of a sudden, she's come over to your side. She's been against the border wall. She's
Right.
been against...
There's only one problem.
Yeah.
If she ever won, immediately from the day after that election, everything would go back to confiscate your guns and forget about oil and everything else. You know, they were cutting back on oil way back. They got rid of Anwar, the biggest oil site perhaps in the world, in Alaska. They did things that are so bad and so destructive, but energy prices started doubling up, and she immediately went back to the Trump plan. But I would have been now 4 times higher than they are right now, because that was 3.5 years ago.
Right.
When she cut it, she cut everything out. She went to wind and went to all this other stuff that doesn't work from an economic standpoint and even a visual standpoint. I don't get the wind. You take these gorgeous plains and deserts and all this stuff, they put these windmills up, they go up like a 30-story building in some cases. They destroy everything, they cut out all, and the environmentalists say, aren't they wonderful? But it's the most expensive form of energy, and it's never going to do for our country.
So if we look at the issues on the economy, on immigration, on law and order, on energy, and America's role in the world, is there anything you could point to that you would say they have been successful on?
No, they have been unsuccessful at everything. And even the economy, I said, as part of the economy, you've let 21 million people, more than that, I think, with all the gotaways.
By the
That's
way,
killing our
including known
economy.
terrorists, and we do have the murders and the rapes and the violent crimes.
Oh, and you haven't seen anything yet. Wait till you see it in the months to come.
You know what scares me, and I've said this on the air, is by having open borders, unvetted illegal immigrants, that I don't think it's a matter of if, I think it's a matter of when that this country's going to be attacked.
If you look at Springfield, Ohio, look at what's happening there. You look at Aurora in Colorado, these beautiful little towns and little cities, small cities, they're being taken over by illegal migrants. I mean, they're people that poured in, and they have weapons like our military doesn't have. You know, they have AK-47s, they have weapons like our military doesn't have. And, you know, some sheriff in one of these towns where he's got 2 deputies and they're not into this. There's no way they can protect the people from this. But look at what's going on in Springfield today. Nobody's ever seen anything like it.
We really appreciate it. I know your people are calling for you to roll. What made you come to the spin room?
I just felt I wanted to. I was very happy with the result. It's a very unfair situation. They've weaponized our government politically, so I mean, that's unfair. And I just felt we had a great night. And I'd come over here. I actually gave a little bit of a news conference. We were swarmed.
Oh, by the way, I could hear it. You were interrupting my show, by the way, just for the record.
I had to come over and do yours. I would hate like heck to leave here and I didn't do
No, I would be
Sean.
mad.
I would have been.
I would take that as a personal offense.
I
There's
would
no
have been
doubt.
in big trouble.
All right, so no answer on their offer for a second debate.
Again, the reason you do a second debate is if you lose, and they lost. And we looked at one poll, it was 92-7.
Yeah.
We looked at another one, 86-3.
Wow.
I mean, we have all of these results coming in, but I'll think about it, you know, it's very quick.
Mr. President, thank you for
very
taking
much.
time. We really
Thank you very
appreciate it.
much.
Thank
I
you, sir.
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. By the way, tomorrow, you're going to be on Fox and Friends tomorrow.
I am indeed, 6:45 in the morning.
Oh, boy.
And then I'm going down to...
You're going to get a lot of sleep tonight.
Then I'm going down to the World Trade Center to
tomorrow.
honor the people that died September 11th.
You know what scares me? We have known terrorists in the country.
Yeah.
And we don't know where they are. And we don't even know about the gotaways.
More than we've ever had before, times 10.
Scary.
Yep, scary.
All right. President Trump will be on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning. We'll have with more reaction to the debate from tonight. Be sure to tune in. As we continue, we're live. We're in Senator Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham, former 2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy. By the way, you all had more time scheduled, but Donald Trump stole it. What are you going to do? Lindsey, we're making you stand, so we're going to put you up first.
Well, this is the only time I'll ever be tall. I'm still not taller than him, and he said, yeah. Terribly moderated debate, 3 against 1.
Oh, it was awful.
The best closing in presidential debate in history. If you could have done it, why didn't you do it? One thing I wish we'd have done a little bit better is I gave you the most secure border in 40 years. When I left, mortgage rates were below 3%. Gas was $1.87. We're energy independent. We're getting the Arabs and the Israelis making peace, and you screwed it all up, and you're never going to fix it.
It's amazing how much we don't know about her radical positions after this debate, because ABC sucked that bad.
Yes.
They did.
They really did.
And every position she's ever had, it's like a jailhouse Jesus conversion. What she believed before, she doesn't believe again. I look at it as a Kamala the BC. Before the convention, she was absolutely opposed to fracking. The energy industry has been decimated under this administration. Think about the border.
She lied when she said she changed the position in 2000.
Yes, 100%. It wasn't just that, though. The border, she now wants a wall. They've allowed the greatest invasion in the history of our country to pour across our southern border.
The people in South Carolina, I am sure, have no problem with free housing, health care, education, and sex change operations for illegal aliens and convicted felons. I mean, how do you not ask that question? How do you not ask it?
We need moderators that are not an extension of the Kamala Harris for President campaign.
That's true.
So, I'm always going to give it to you straight. So a few things I would say is, did she exceed the very low expectations that were set for her? Yes, she did. That being said, if you were going to fact check one candidate, you can't not, or perceived fact check, some of those weren't even real fact checks, you have to apply the same standard to the other candidate. They absolutely failed to do that tonight. I do think the strongest moment for either candidate that'll matter 3 weeks from now is actually Donald Trump being crystal clear on his position on abortion. Kamala Harris and their campaign have consistently been stating outright, as though it's a fact, that he would sign a federal abortion ban. He did a good job tonight saying that this is an issue for the states. It's an issue where different Republicans may even differ. But he got a chance to make his position known on one of the issues where Democrats were trying to hang Republicans out to dry. And I thought he excelled at that. It's the most underappreciated part of tonight.
I actually think you're right on the money here.